After years of dreaming what her future might look like, and months of meticulous planning, the day had finally arrived. She could hear them clearly. Wedding bells. It was an embracing fall day, the trees wrapped in coordinated colors of their own, friends and family traveling from near and far to celebrate and bear witness to a love that was only just beginning. A story that was writing its first chapters. Her heartbeat shook the fingers that were wrapped tightly around her bouquet, but her feet stood firmly at the threshold of the aisle entrance. With a momentary pause, she nodded with gratitude, and the towering doors were opened. As she took her first steps into a room filled with admiring eyes, all she could see was him. Tradition wrapped its blessings around them as they spoke their vows and promised one another in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. And as the rings were exchanged, she shifted nervously with anticipation of what was yet to come. They smiled at one another. And as the officiant announced their legal union, their wedded names spoken aloud for the very first time, she closed her eyes and she leaned in. And for a moment, all was still. But then he squeezed her hand. Her eyes snapped open and she looked up to find him grinning. Before she knew it, she was flying down the aisle, pulled in one direction by her sister, who was trying to hand off her bouquet, and in the other by her now husband, who was speeding toward the door. As they spilled out onto the steps of the church, the ceremony falling into a blur behind them, he turned to her and with a mischievous smile said, "Your mother asked me not to kiss you in front of the congregation." And then he held her tightly, like the rest of his life would change with this very moment. And for the first time, they kissed as husband and wife. In that very moment, kissing on the steps of the outside of the church, my maternal grandparents had no way of knowing just how much their union would change the world. You see, their love story was a simple one. A small town girl meets a small town boy. Their house is close enough that they can shine Morse code through their bedroom windows after dark. She watches him play baseball from her front porch. He gets help with her. He gets help with his homework from her on the bus. They fall in love. They get married. He drives a truck. She teaches school. They dream of starting a family. It results in some unexpected losses. Their first child is a blessing. They get pregnant again. Their second child is a blessing. They want 3 kids. They get pregnant a third time, but they lose the baby. They get pregnant again. They lose the baby. They pray, they consult, they keep trying. They get pregnant again. She carries it to full term, but they lose the baby. Their third child is a blessing. You see, their love story was simple, but their love story was not. It was written with magic, but consumed by reality. There was joy, but there was also significant loss. And yet through it all, they remained steadfastly confident that love and kindness is what matters most in this world. So rather than build an empire of wealth, they built a kingdom of selfless and compassionate human beings. And that was the answer to a rich life. I grew up on a diet of Disney princesses and Hallmark movies. To me, true love was achievable with the right combination of looking irresistibly disheveled and accidentally stumbling into the wrong classroom. Did I spend years walking into the wrong classroom with the hopes of locking eyes with a stranger? Well, I'll never tell. But I can tell you that the daydream of finding my Prince Charming in some undeniably cheesy way was never far from reach. There was Colin, who I met while pretending to be a lawyer during a summer camp program in middle school called You're on Trial. The legally blonde energy was a little too real, and when he started writing me warm fuzzies, well, the rest was history. At least for that one short week on campus. And then there was Chase, who I fell madly in love with while he dramatically read the ingredients from the back of a can of Minute Maid lemonade. He was surrounded by swooning middle school girls, and yet I was the one he asked to dance. He moonwalked his way into my life, and I was convinced he was the one. Until he left me for his co-star in The Music Man. There was trouble in River City, all right. And then there was Alex, who bought me pearl earrings and invited me to fly on his family's private jet. So long as I pretended to enjoy fishing and regularly rinsed and repeated the sentence, "For the love of graduation, Alex, please put down the video game controller and do your homework." We were great friends, but we weren't well paired. At this point in my life, my relationships were fairly short-lived and surface level. But I assumed that might just be what love is. Holding hands through a movie neither one of you really wanted to watch, just so you could hold hands in public, until your parents would pick you up from the theater and drive you through a Wendy's so you could pretend like you were happy to share your Frosty and fries, even though you look over and wish that you really would have kept the whole thing to yourself. Love is compromise, I guess. But it wasn't all flirtatious laughter and salty smiles, though. No, my fairy godmother was a little late to the show on a few of the men I dated. One of them took me to Five Guys, which, let me just add, was embarrassing enough because my definition of an undeniably good burger in those days was a single burger patty on a bun, no other toppings, dipped in ketchup. Yes, dipped in ketchup. I achieved the perfect ketchup to burger ratio with every single bite. But not only did I end up getting laughed out of Five Guys on our first date, but my first date also decides that his definition of an undeniably good burger is one that involves mustard, pickles, and a massive heap of onions. When I tell you that our faces became repelling magnets when he leaned in for a kiss that evening, I mean, it was awkward. The fumes seeping from that man's mouth. We did the Midwestern goodbye dance for what felt like an entire other date night until he finally got the hint and headed for the door. Then there was Twix Boy, who took me to see a movie about bullying and then refused to take me home until I agreed to be his girlfriend. And that's all I really have to say about that one. But my final flop sent me head over heels for an hyperactive entrepreneur with anger management issues who tried to convince me that downing Adderall would change my life for the better. When he ditched me for the Dominican Republic, I thought, you know what? Shoot. When he ditched me for the Dominican Republic just before my birthday, I thought, you know what? They can keep him. It wasn't long after he left that I decided to forget the whole thing. I spent so many years looking for my other half, the man that would finally complete me, the man who would rescue me from my musings and help me see the light. I began to think maybe this fairy tale thing was overrated. I mean, my grandparents got really lucky. They grew up in a small town. They got to know each other at a young age. But we just don't live in that kind of world anymore. No, we live in a strange world of Tinder, Bumble, and Blueberry, or whatever the app the kids are using these days. Well, I decided I was done waiting. I decided I didn't need a prince after all. I was a strong, a fiercely independent, and intelligent woman who never ceased to grab life by the ears and scream, "Give me all you've got!" I didn't need a man for that. Even after I met my soulmate at a small New Year's Eve gathering, I kept my eyes on the prize. When I received an offer to move abroad for 6 months after graduating, I didn't stop to think what that might mean for us. Because I knew he would leave. Who wouldn't? But when I told him my plans, and that I understood if this ended our journey together, he looked at me and he said, plain as day, "I've waited my whole life for you. What's 6 months more?" Doesn't get more fairy tale than that. You see, love stories don't have to be complicated, but love itself isn't always easy. If there's anything my grandparents' love story taught me, it's that love is a practice. It's an energy you put out into the world with your whole self. It's a gift that expects nothing in return. A glue that holds two equally enamored individuals together for life. Love is supportive, curious, and kind. Love is 67 years, despite the losses and hardship. It is 67 years of a beautiful thing. I spent too long searching for the man that would make me whole, and not enough time for the man who would steadfastly remind me that I already am. After years of dreaming about what my future might look like, and months of meticulous planning, the day had finally arrived. October 15th, 2021. My heartbeat shook the fingers that wrapped around my bouquet. My feet stood firmly at the threshold of the aisle entrance, and the doors stood tall before me. With a momentary pause, void of doubt, I nodded my head with gratitude, and the doors were opened. And suddenly, he was all I could see.